Today I'm talking to Patrick Schwartzkopf about permaculture, gardening planning, the history of gardening, and his animal rescue farm. This guy has so much knowledge on gardening and composting. It's such a beautiful conversation. I've personally learned so much from this talk. Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back to the show. Today, sitting across from me is a dear friend of mine. We've been yogaing for a number of years together. And Patrick's the perfect example of the reason why I started this podcast. So before I get into that, Patrick has 28 years of landscaping and restoration industry experience. He's got his master's in environmental horticulture and urban forestry from UW, and he's got a Bachelor of Science. So the reason I started this podcast was to talk to cool ass people that are all around me at all times, that are in our lives, that if we just had the opportunity to talk to them about what they do, a vast amount of knowledge would pop up. And so I've known you for 3 or 4 years now, yogaing.
All the bliss, yeah.
Yep, totally. And we've transactionally conversated, I know Liz, little bits about your life, all this stuff. But then one day, about a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, Monica went over to your property and to look at a mural that you guys wanted to do and all this stuff. And she came back and she's like, "Did you know Patrick has a farm?" And I'm like, "No, I had no idea." She's like, "Did you know he rescues animals on that farm?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I love Patrick even more now." And then I talked to you about that, and we started talking about your environmental background and gardening and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is exactly why. If you have the vulnerability to ask the person sitting next to you a question about something involving your life, you'd be surprised at how in-depth their answer could be.
Yeah.
That's you, my friend.
Nice. Excellent.
So happy you're here, brother.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate it. I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. I love how you're bringing everybody together, and I love the people that you're bringing on, their stories, their trials, their tribulations, their challenges. You just had Allie on, like one of my best friends in the world, and it was weird listening. I felt like I was like kind of in the room. I'm like
eavesdropping a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is crazy. So thank you for bringing all of us together and bringing this platform out here. I love it. It's inspiring to hear other people's stories and what they're doing. There's so much out there that I didn't know. So it's cool, dude. Thanks.
Thank you, brother.
Great.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the feedback and appreciate you being part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So today we're going to talk to Patrick about a lot of like his background and how that activates and actually actualizes in with our lives. Permaculture is a word I hear, here and there, gardening, things like that, but, I don't know really the understandings of gardening. I understand. But some of the things that I really love about what Patrick does is bringing the information to the people. Permaculture, agricultural ecosystems, like, again, these are all words I hear. Mm-hmm. And I think, one of the reasons that I was really excited to talk to you initially was I read about a person not too long ago in New York that was starting this movement about urban farming. And the idea of, you might have, like, if you have some property of some sort, let's say you own a house or a condo or a duplex, something, there might be a small amount of property on there, right? Like grass or something. And, a lot of times it's just grass and we mow it and we pay to mow it and we keep it short and it's grass and that's it. But this gentleman is like, well, why don't we plant crops here? Like there's it might be like 2 cubic feet, of space, but you can grow something there and you can grow vertical, right? I mean, you might not have a lot of space horizontally, but you can go vertically. And so one of his things right now is going into the inner cities where there are these patches of just dirt and putting gardens there and then allowing those just to be community gardens, and that made me think, because like, how much time do I spend mowing my goddamn lawn, fertilizing it, making it look as green as I can, but then chopping it as short as I can because I don't want it to grow and look all weird and stuff? What's a better use for it?
Yeah, so when people tell me they want a low maintenance lawn, I kind of like scratch my head a little bit and I laugh because I'm like, well, you realize that growing grass is one of the most labor intensive, time intensive parts of landscaping, parts of gardening. You have to feed it. You've got to fertilize it. You've got to water it. You've got to mow it. You've got to edge it. You've got to make sure that there's no fungus growing in it. There's all these things. There's aerating it. There's thatching it. There's top dressing it. So when people are like, I want a really green lawn, I'm like, all right, how much are we wanting to spend on this lawn? Because this is going to take a lot of money and time to do that. So there's other ways. So I love it when a customer wants to tell me that they want to get rid of their lawn, because that makes me very happy, because there's so much more that we can do. By bringing in shrubs, native shrubs, berries. We're able to bring in more birds, more insects. It just enhances the ecosystem around you. So, permaculture, it's kind of a way of life. It's a way. It's everybody's got kind of a different definition of it, but for me, it's living with the ecosystem and not fighting it. And because when you fight something, you're gonna probably get some negative results off.
Right.
Of it.
Yeah. Now, when you so if you have a customer that says, "Hey, I want to get rid of the yard and want to do a garden," do you find that you have to kind of condition that soil to get to a point to where the garden's going to be better received?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Soil is the number one thing when you're trying to grow anything.
Yeah.
Yes, there's aquaculture and there's aeroculture, where you can just grow it just right out of, get the nutrients right out of the air with some mists and things like that. But really, it's all about the soil. And I've got this like crazy farm that we live on that I get a whole bunch of poop from llamas and cow and goats and pigs and chickens. And so I build my soil. Like, that's what I did this weekend. I had a compost pile that is ready for the vegetable bed. So I topped off 2 big vegetable beds with just this dark soil. It was so complex with microbes and organisms and fungi, and it's one of the reasons why I do organically, where I try not to put any kind of chemicals, because when you put down like a fungicide or an insecticide, you're not only killing this one specific fungus that you're going after, but you're killing all the organisms in the soil.
It's kind of like an antibiotic to the body, huh?
Yeah.
You just take an antibiotic, it's like just kills everything.
Yeah. So it reminds me of, so my undergrad degree was from Murray State University in Western Kentucky. This pretty small school, really good basketball team. That's what they're known for. They're going to the dance this year, like they always do. So it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. I went down there and didn't know what I really wanted to do. It's in the middle of farmland, so I took a couple agriculture classes. Thought they were great. Some of the really fun instructors. The classroom was full of, guys with, shirtless sleeves on, Wrangler jeans, spit and dip in the class. I'm kind of over here with this long hair with like corduroys and a tie-dye t-shirt on, and
one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember the crop science class where we're being introduced to Roundup Ready corn and soybean. Okay. So what they basically did is they took the genes from Roundup and inserted them into the seeds of corn and soybean. So you could broadcast Roundup all over your field, and the corn and the soybean are going to be totally fine, but all the weeds are going to start dying off.
Interesting.
So it's a very selective in that only that corn and the soybean are going to be resistant to it.
Right.
They do it with wheat. There's all sorts of other crops that they do it with. And so I was the kid in the class, raising his hand and being like, "Oh, what are the impacts to everything else around it? What about the soil? What's going on there? We're killing off everything else." And so it was like, they just kind of brushed me off.
Patrick's got his hand up again.
Oh, this guy.
Interesting. All right.
So that's kind of how I was really introduced to that side of agriculture. Big ag is what you call it, right? Monsanto, Dow, all these big agriculture companies. And so a lot of what we do now is driven by them. A lot of what we eat in the grocery store is driven by how much we can grow. Maximize those yield, maximize those profits. Everything should be able to be done sitting in the cab of a $300,000 piece of machinery.
Right.
It's just the amount of land that's just being gobbled up by big corporations in our country is crazy. The small farmer, there is no small farmer.
Right.
It's so hard to make money farming. If I could make money farming, I would love to do it.
Right.
I can't match my current income as a farmer. Without putting in a lot of time and energy into it, right? So we're in a weird area right now. We're in a weird kind of time.
Yeah, I agree.
Feel.
There's a book that was introduced to me a while back called Frankenwheat, and it's a book basically about the GMOs being added into and all that stuff into the American or the Western style farming agriculture, right? And I can't remember the author of the book, but basically what they're saying is that any products that are made pretty much post World War II, have some kind of GMOs in it, some kind of like wheat was the example here. So with wheat, they tried different ways to grow wheat really, really fast, right? And the first time they grew it, it was really thin and really long, and it broke easily. And so what they settled on was it to grow very thick and very stout, but grows quickly. And so they're like, okay, that works because it's thick, it's hardy, it can hold on, and then we can process that. Well, now we have this rampant celiac disease in the West, but there's countless accounts of people that have quote unquote celiac disease that go to somewhere like Italy and can have wheat and can have pizza and can have all these things because it's the original strain of what wheat was. It's not this modified strain of what we've now been ingesting. So to your point, which you were raising your hand and asking the question at Murray State, it's like I think we're asking those questions now, but we need to really be good about so the immediate solution is great. The engine, for example, like the combustion engine solved a ton of problems. No more horsepower. We didn't need to wait till the horses were calm and we didn't have to water them. Put gas in an engine, start that fucker up, and we're good to go, right? We didn't know it was going to cause pollution, global warming, and all this shit. It solved the problem back then, right? And so I get, again, we solved a quote unquote problem by being able to grow fruits and vegetables at a mass rate. But now we're seeing that, but we're still fucking doing it, right? Now we're seeing it. Why do we have cancer? Why do we have all these autoimmune deficiencies? Why do we have all these things that have just recently become very, very regular in our world? Look at the fucking shit we're putting in our bodies.
And it's the crazy thing is that it's spreading too. So that population of GMO wheat is not only it's spreading to roadsides. It's mixing and hybridizing with the farmer across the street that isn't using GMO. Well, now if he's trying to save his seeds for the next season and they're being cross-pollinated with this GMO field over here, then it's a little, now he's got something he doesn't want, right? He can't control that. So it's
so even if you opt out of it, you're pretty much forced into it.
Now you've got this, they call it super wheat, the one that grows in, ditches and because it's hard to get rid of. Yeah, you can't spray it because it's got Roundup in it.
Right, yeah.
Okay, all right. So now we're creating this other like weird ecological why?
Right, yeah. I just read an article, and I don't know if they were released yet, but in California, the FDA the EPA, passed the admittance to release genetically modified mosquitoes into California and Florida. And I think the idea was, I can't remember the reason that they were doing it, but they're releasing these genetically modified mosquitoes, and now those mosquitoes are going to get out there and start mating with current mosquitoes, and now we're going to have these like super mosquitoes that might be resistant to all these things, And again, it's like, who's asking these questions? Like, where's the research coming from? Yeah. There are brilliant minds in this world that are asking questions, but are we giving them the platform to listen to them?
It's tough. I mean, it's moving a huge ship in a different direction, and in my opinion, it all has to start local. It all has to start within your own community and supporting your local farmers and asking your farmers at the farmers market questions about the food. How did they grow it? What are they growing it in? How many chickens do you have turning your compost? You know, I mean, it's just getting to know your farmer gets you more connected to your food, and that's what really permaculture is to me. It's having people get connected to growing things on their land. Even if you are in a small little apartment with just a little balcony, you can still do stuff with pots, and you can still. I remember composting. My first apartment compost was just a Tupperware container. I just got a Tupperware container and I drilled some holes in the bottom of it and had a tray and started shredding up some newspaper as kind of the base, and then all of a sudden I just started throwing my coffee grounds, everything. And now I've got I don't even know how many compost systems I have right now. There's a lot. There's a lot with all the different kind of animal droppings I get. I can really experiment with my compost systems.
Very cool.
So just starting small, you're closing that loop. You're first of all, you're not taking your waste and putting it in the garbage, which goes off into no man's land that we're never going to see again.
Right.
We're just taking our waste and putting it into somebody else's ecosystem. We just don't know it. I mean,
Right.
So that was one of the first things, was like try to limit like my garbage bag to like one a week. You know, it's just Liz and I, right? So it's like we shouldn't have a ton. And so that was an easy way for us to start. And then it was, you know, it just kind of grew from there as far as closing the loops. And
well, do you mind? So, this might be elementary, but you know, there's terms that I think people need to find. You know, like compost, for example. Like I know what compost is. I understand the concept behind compost, but let's take so I don't have a farm. I live in a house. I'm in a residential area. What is compost looking like for me?
Sure.
Like, you know, how would I compost? What would I compost? You know, what would that process look like?
So there's a lot of different ways to compost. So I have a good friend of mine that just got one of those bins that are on a kind of a round platform, and it's got a handle, and you turn it
like a big bingo thing, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you know, he goes out and maybe once a week he'll put his stuff from the kitchen. So when we're talking about stuff from the kitchen, I'm thinking like coffee grounds, eggshells, greens, vegetables, no dairy, no meat, no fish. You could probably do fish, but it would just it might smell up your compost a little bit. Fish is super high in nitrogen. There's a lot of studies about finding salmon DNA and root system of trees.
Really?
Yeah. So like, you know, bear will take that carcass, drag it up into the forest, eat it, leave, you know, just some skin and bones down there. All of a sudden those break down, super high in nitrogen. The plants, the trees, they all take up that nutrients and use it, or you lose it, right? So fish is sometimes okay. What else do we put in there? So it's really just kind of your vegetables, your fruits. Those are great. And so once a week, he'll put that in there and then kind of crank it, turn that compost tumbler, I guess, if you will.
Okay.
And what that does is it produces a lot of air going through the decomposing material, which speeds up that anaerobic bacteria munching everything down. If you've got worms in there, worms kind of help do it too.
Okay.
Some people use what's called a green cone, so they'll bury a green cone in the backyard, kind of dig down, 2 or 3 feet deep hole, and then there's these green cones that you can buy that's got a lid on top of it. And you just add it to it. So that's called a slow composter. You're not really turning that compost down there. So you're just throwing debris on top of it, and it slowly breaks down over time.
It's like the heat of the earth.
Yeah,
kind of,
heat of the earth. Yep. If you mix up your greens, so there's like a carbon to nitrogen ratio that you kind of look for, and when it's carbon and nitrogen, it would be green to brown.
Okay.
So like brown, I'm thinking like leaves in the fall. Like that's a great source of carbon. When it's greens, I'm thinking like weeds that I'm pulling from the garden. Okay. Old head of lettuce or something, cabbage, something like that. So getting that kind of good mixing of it in there. So that's another way to do it. Like I said, I started mine with and I still have a Tupperware container. And I've got kind of 3 Tupperware containers where once one gets filled up, I switch it to another one. Once that one gets filled up, I switch it to another one. By the time I get to my 3rd one, it's ready for the garden. I have chickens everywhere, so they kind of get inside mine. And chickens, they don't eat avocado pits. So like, I have a huge bowl, like a 5-gallon planter just full of avocado pits that I have no idea what I'm going to do with.
Right.
Liz was doing some research on how to clean our llama fur. So we shear our llamas every year.
Yep.
And apparently if you soak them in avocado pits, they produce a dye of some sort.
Oh, interesting.
So I think that might be what I do with those avocado pits.
There you go.
So
everything's got a use.
Everything's got a use, and that is what permaculture is everything that it's on the farm has a specific use. mostly everything.
Right.
I have 3 peacocks, and they don't really have they do kind of have a little bit of use. They're beautiful to look at, first of all. Like, these peacocks are, I see you've got some feathers here.
Oh yeah.
In the room. We have feathers everywhere. The peacocks are great. I think they're just like that beautiful animal that we get to look at, and
they're loud.
They are loud. They're the first ones that tell us that a coyote's around.
Okay.
So they'll kind of yell out, and then we also have guinea fowl. They kind of go crazy. The roosters start going off a little bit, and this is a very busy time of the year for the coyotes. They're
just waking up.
They are. We've had some losses of chickens here in the last couple weeks due to coyotes.
Yeah.
We've got the llamas, which act as a protectorate most of the time, but they're slick.
Yeah.
They're slick.
Squirrely little guys.
They're smart.
Yeah.
Yep. Very smart. We name all the animals on the property.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's like, if you love them, they're part of your family, you name them.
Even the coyotes.
Oh, good for you.
Even the coyotes. Even the Carl the coyote. Carl. We've got herons, Harriet the heron, like, she likes to hang out. We got eagles and...
Oh, that's great. And, that's, for me, that's the epitome of permaculture. It's like, it's not like you're fighting the coyotes, it's understanding they're part of their ecosystem, right? No, you don't want them to eat your livestock and stuff, but you know what? Carl's got to eat too.
I've got 11 acres. And so when you think of permaculture, we think of it in zones. So zone 0 is like the house. So that's kind of like, your indoor plants, maybe like how you start your compost system. Zone 2 is like the zone like just directly outside of your house. So really high intensive, high turnover things like your herb garden or like a vegetable garden, a chicken coop. That might even be in zone 1. Zone 2 might even be like your shelters or your orchard or like where you grow berries. Zone 4 is going to be like a pasture or like timberland.
Okay.
And then zone 5 is like wild. So that's kind of how I approach it, is like, all right, these coyotes are in zone 5.
Right.
They like to walk all the way up to zone 2. Okay, how do I get them to stop walking all the way up to zone 2 and picking off my chickens? Well, I got to put up fencing. Or, we've got to like figure something else out, you know? So it's a lot of like finding problems and then coming up with a multitude of solutions and working through them.
Yep.
I heard a quote yesterday. It's when you cross a river, you try to feel each stone as you cross the river. So you take it slow.
Yeah.
Instead of like trying to run and all of a sudden like, oh, there's a really big stone right over there and you jump right on it, but it's on a poor foundation. And you slip and you fall off of that stone.
Yeah.
And so it's I thought that little analogy really resonated with me, and like how like we're trying to rehab this farm from the 1950s.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
I read a story recently about a tribe in Africa that is it's been growing. Their agricultural side is growing. And so with that, they're putting their farms out a little bit farther. It's extending a little bit farther, close to tree lines where there's elephants and other wild animals. And so the elephants have gotten upset, and they're like, nope, you're taking our land. And so what they've done is they start going into the farms, and they start like tramping at all the agriculture and all the food that's being grown, just demolishing the farmlands. And so it's an African tribe. They work with that land. Like, they understand. Like, that's not even, like, permaculture is probably not even a word for them. It's just life, right? That's just what life is.
Yep.
And so their solution to this was, okay, so we don't want to kill the elephants. Elephants are awesome. We want to expand because we have bigger families and blah, blah, blah. So how do we do this responsibly? So what they figured out was that bees and elephants don't really get along. Oh. And they wanted bees, they wanted honey and stuff like that too. So they put on the perimeter of their farm, they put up bee boxes every about like 15 feet or so. And so when the elephants started to approach again, now they heard bees and they're like, fucking bees. We don't like the bees. And it started keeping them away.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy cow, that's great. I mean, granted, this is another example of humans moving into wildlife and taking that up.
Right.
But at least it's more of a responsible way this time. Instead of like, get out there and kill all those elephants, take their tusks, we'll make some money for the village, and then we'll grow from there. It's like, no, they need to be here as much as we need to be here. How do we play this infinite game that everybody wins, right? Okay, let's put something out there that's more natural, that'll deter them. Sorry, find a new place, but we're not killing people. We're not killing things.
Yeah, I'm thinking of of a really ornery elephant right now being stung by a whole bunch of bees.
Yeah, dude. Oh, the gentle giants, man. Yeah, I don't want to be around those damn things.
Well, that reminds me of so over in eastern Washington in the grape fields, they use above the grapevines they'll have a speaker and they'll send out the sound of a kestrel.
Okay.
And so what that does is that freaks out all the other birds that want to come in and like swipe down and eat the grapes.
Okay.
And so it's another way. So what we're doing is we found a system that deters either elephants or whatever birds are eating the berries over there. And that's part of just this whole idea.
Mm-hmm. It's like an advanced scarecrow, huh?
Yeah. You try to mimic nature as much as you can. Nature is the best teacher that is out there.
Yep.
I think, if when you're looking at a design, you try to mimic nature. I try to, at least. If you ever try to do like an herb spiral, you ever heard of an herb spiral?
Yeah.
So spirals are everywhere in nature. When I first started learning about spirals was the Fibonacci sequence.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's just like I learned it, and then all of a sudden I started seeing it everywhere. And so a great design is an herb spiral, which basically how it's orientated is as it goes up. It's really hard to describe it on the radio, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, they can't see hand movements.
They can't see it, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing all this stuff with my hands. But as you grow up with that spiral, plants on the north side are going to be able to. You'll plant plants that are more acclimated to being on the north side of the spiral. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a little bit shadier on that side due to how your spiral's built up. And so things on the west side and the south side are going to love the sun, and then you can kind of play with your levels on it. So anytime you can kind of bring an element of nature into your design pattern is super fun. It's, planting things in a hexagon, just like bees do, I mean, there's all sorts of interesting fractals that you can invite into a design like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And when you when you keep it close to nature,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's one of the issues that we have with a lot of the supplements that we have right now. Like you can grow holy basil, for example, right? Holy basil, what they've found for that is it's good for your brain. It helps decalcify, damaged brain cells. It helps with Alzheimer's, all this stuff with your brain. So yeah, you can grow that and chop that up and eat it, right? Or you can go to the store and take a supplement that says it's holy basil, right? Back in in Ayurvedic days, when when we used to harvest things by hands, in Ayurveda, that's the sister science of yoga, right? It's a style of looking at the body. These, and not just them, but I'm using this as an example, but these practitioners, when they were harvesting the herbs and the fruits and stuff, they would sing chants to them to help activate all the properties, the healing properties in that, and so again, like if we're just, using these machines to, even if we're growing the actual crop, we're using these machines to physically rip this stuff out. It's being manhandled through this process. There's no love in there anymore. There's no like speaking to and activating of. And so there's like this big chain that's being missed with the human connection to the things that we're all a part of. Like I'm part hummingbird bones and stardust and fucking grapefruit and like all kinds of shit. So is that fucking piece of corn I'm about to eat, right? It might taste like corn, but it's got all the same shit in it that I got. Right. So like eat the natural thing, eat the thing that's like that you've grown, that you've put your time and your love and effort into, or if you can, or a friend of yours. Right. We have a friend, Andy Chris Caden, right. He's yoga's with us and he's got a bunch of chickens and he brings his chicken eggs in. Monica, my girlfriend's a vegan, but she'll eat his chicken eggs because she knows where they come from. She loves him. She knows he takes care of the stuff right. There's no crap in there, so it's just good stuff.
I think that goes back to what I was doing with my soil this weekend. So I feel whenever I get my hands in the soil, and there's studies about what it does to your brain and how it just kind of slows things down. And when you think about it, my hands are just, a lot of people think it's weird, like, oh God, your hands are so dirty, getting in the soil. And I could never touch soil like that, but I can feel the temperature of the soil, and I can tell that the soil is not quite warm enough to support a new seed.
That's beautiful.
And I don't think I can really feel the microorganisms, but man, when I meditate, I can. I can kind of get on this like weird kind of atomic level and try to like imagine, you know, just these little nematodes and other little things that are going on in the soil. And, you know, soil is basically a lot of air. And over time, it kind of, it comes down and it kind of compacts over time. And as it compacts, it loses its virility and life. And so when it's super big and fluffy like that, I mean, it's just, I think of it like a big motel of just like really, really small things, just having a great party.
Hell yeah.
And like, they're just like consuming everything.
Yep.
And it's just like ride or die.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Frank, bring the chicken poop in. We're almost out.
Oh man, they are just like having a great time. And then, you know, then we get to put our plants in there.
Yep.
And they're holding up all these root systems in that soil. And the roots are like, hell yeah, Frank.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. And, you know, it just, and that's why you can grow such great vegetables at home by yourself with the compost that you build. And then you get to eat it. And then that's when like you're sitting there eating dinner, and I'm sure Liz gets a kick out of it. Every time like I go and like harvest a whole bunch of food and I bring it inside and I make dinner and I'm sitting there like eating this salad, I'm like, this is the best salad ever. Yeah. She just kind of like rolls her eyes and like, yeah, these are great. This arugula is awesome.
Yeah. But there is, I mean, there is that connection when you make it,
Yeah.
when you like grow it and then you prepare it and you
I
make
had
it.
the
You
seed
eat
in
it.
my hand, and now I'm eating the leaf that it. I mean, it's just go out and garden, people. Go out and start a garden this weekend. It's springtime. You never know what's going to happen in this world.
Right.
Prices of everything are going up. I said this 2 years ago. Whenever COVID started, everybody's centered in their house.
Right.
Go grow a garden. What else are we doing right now? There's this plague that's out there that people are getting sick and dying. We need to focus on our health now more than ever.
Right.
So go out, grow a garden, grow some good food for your body.
Right.
It reminds me, I mean, shit, if you want to take it to like during World War II, victory gardens were the big thing.
Oh.
When our boys went to war, the women stepped up and started working in the factories, Rosie the Riveter,
Right.
and just, you know, kept our system going. But victory gardens was this thing advertised everywhere, every small little town. They turned all these little street corners that you're talking about in the inner city, they turned those into victory gardens. And they grew food for people in the area because all our boys were at war. We're not growing the same amount of food on the same, and farms were a lot smaller back then.
Yeah.
You know, so things like that. I mean, it's just like, we never know what's going to happen, but if you can be a little bit more sustainable on your own end and, you know, have some chickens so you can eat eggs every day.
Right.
And, you know, it's just, it just makes you feel a little bit more prepared and ready. I am not a doomsday prepper by any standpoint.
Right.
But I do feel like if who was it? Cypress Hill said, when the shit goes down, you better be ready.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel that way at times, you know?
You know, and that's you bring up a really good point, you know, like and I'm not going to blanket this for everybody. COVID was a dark time for a lot of people, right?
Absolutely.
But it was a time for a lot of people to have freedom, right? To be in a place where they didn't have to go to work all the time and to just really kind of explore themselves. And to your point, like in one of the biggest, worldly potential disasters that we've been through as a humanity, we didn't focus really at all on our health. It was like, how much money can we give the people to make sure that they feel safe? That's great. But okay, now we're all trapped in our rooms and our houses. Yes, okay, there could be a shortage of supply. We don't know if there's going to be trucks that are going to be delivering food anymore. Hey world, here's how you grow food. Everybody still has access to TV, to internet, to something. Here's a public service announcement from the United States on how to grow your own fucking food. Here's a compost. Here's how to make compost. Here's some seeds. We'll give you fucking seeds.
Yeah.
You know, let's start this up. Because, like, to your point, like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, we're seeing this world in a very interesting way right now. And I think a lot of people realize how unprepared that we are for the world that's not not industrialized like it is right now.
Yeah.
Like if shit goes sideways, can I grow my own food? Can I protect myself? Can I survive in nature? Do I know what berries to eat and what not to eat?
Yeah.
You know, and that seems like a lot, but it's also not.
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, just think about how many bullshit things that you know, like who signed the Declaration of Independence, like what year this thing fucking happened, but you don't know how to control and manage your own fucking body and your own humanity. You know, like I've talked about this on a previous podcast about like rites of passages, you know, like we should, you know, not should, but I think it's an opportunity for us to relook at what current rites of passages would be. You know, like in the past, this is a broad brush statement, but you know, like, hey, go walk in the woods for a little while, find your humanity, and then come back and share that with us. Might not be so susceptible for everybody now. Right. You know, it's not the right thing. Like, hey, 12-year-old, here's a face full of mushrooms. Good luck. Follow the moon. You know, but like, what can that be for us now? Like, here's breath work that you can use to up and down regulate your nervous system. Here's how to grow some basic foods that you can use year round or seasonally or within this. These spoil really fast. These don't. These are easy to grow. These are harder. Blah, 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 whatever it is. But if we start learning that at a young age, it's second nature.
It's so important. It's so important. So my master's program that I did at UW, the project that I had to complete was I created a high school botany program at the University of Washington Arboretum.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would bring high school kids out and basically do kind of like what I was doing as a TA in the botany department and doing plant identification and talking about plants, but this time it's in the field where I can kind of be this like kooky camp leader kind of guy and talk about plants and introduce them to plant families. And so I think that education has to be primary with any kind of this big titanic shift that we need to do. Kids need to be the one who need to be learning about it. Last Child in the Woods was a book that I kind of really relied upon during my time there. And it's all about this kind of nature versus nature attitude and how much kids get out of learning and being in the field and just being allowed to like create and get their hands dirty. And earlier, a couple weeks ago, I was walking around with a customer, and she had I think he was probably 4 or 5, and he just carried around this little shovel, and like he was just digging over in the corner, and he was talking to himself, and he was creating, and she was just kind of like telling him not to so much, and I'm like, let him do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have no children. I have nothing to base this upon, but I know some stuff.
Right.
I'm like, this is really good for him.
Yeah.
And she just kind of laughed, and like, we just let him do it, and it was great. But, you know, I taught environmental education. So I did an AmeriCorps Student Conservation Association program in New Hampshire. Back when I was in my early 20s, you know, when you have kind of don't know what you want to do in life. I mean, I worked as a gardener for a long time, as like kind of growing up in high school and college. But I did this AmeriCorps program where it was 10 months, and the first 3 months during the wintertime, we taught environmental education to kids in Manchester and Concord. And so I was like this like fun-loving teacher going in, and I was actually teaching kids about compost. I put on a French chef hat, and I had this really geeky French accent. Yeah. And so I did, oh, oui, oui. You want some compost?
Yeah.
And the kids just ate it up, you know? Yeah. So it was like, I hope that some of that little kernel just like stuck in those kids' heads of this like, you know, hippie dreadlock guy teaching me about compost with the chef hat on. You know, I think one class they did a Crocodile Dundee impersonation the entire time.
You know, I will say this, man. I guarantee some of those kids remember that shit, man. I grew up. My mom was a YMCA. I was a Y brat, right? My mom grew up in the Y, And so I've been proxy to like those goofy ass camp counselors that like have this weird approach but beautiful messages, and not just camp counselors, teachers in general. And I can honestly say like that wackiness, that goofiness, especially when you're a kid, that fucking sticks with you, man, because you're an adult that doesn't act like other adults, right? And that's special when a child can see an adult be a child too and have childlike tendencies. That's beautiful because that's what we all want.
Yep.
Like we don't want to be serious, stick up our ass kind of people. Like I want to go with the flow. I want to be able to laugh if I fall on my face and not be upset because somebody else found that funny too, you know, but we lose that as we get older. So like having that and giving that example to those children, I guarantee somebody's going to remember that.
I try not to lose that giddiness too as an adult. You know, oh God, this Pittman class we were in today. At one point at the end of the class, the Saturday Night Fever song came on. And like we all started clapping during class, and it was just like we were all just laughing, and man, that's what it's about. It's really about, I mean, God, what endorphins are released when you're smiling and you're having a good time. It's just everything is a little bit more easy to take on.
Definitely. There's a podcast I listen to hosted by Aubrey Marcus, great guy, and he's got a quote that he likes to say. It's you can tell the spiritual master by the sound of their laughter. And I find that 100% true, man. You know, you got those stoic, you know, like I'm a spiritual master guy and I'm not going to fucking smile and I'm just, you know, standing at attention all the time. And then you got the Dalai Lama over here, like playing dice with kids and like fucking coloring mandalas and shit. I'm like, that's the guy I want to be.
Yes.
I want to be that because that's what's figured out.
Amen.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh man. So with gardening in general, you had talked about how gardening today is a bit different than the way it used to be. What's you know, is it good different? Is it bad different? Is it progressive in a way?
It changes a lot. I think there's a lot more younger people getting involved with it, and the gardening industry as a whole, sales did skyrocket during COVID. When people were stuck, the garden centers just like they ran out of stuff. So I feel like there is a precipice of people like wanting to know where their stuff comes from, but there's also a lot of people that just don't care.
Right.
It's just that they don't. It takes time. It takes energy. It takes a little bit of forethought. Right. So I think what I'm seeing is a lot of people who have kids are the ones who are starting these gardens now.
Cool.
That's kind of what I'm seeing on the industry side, and it's encouraging to see that.
Yeah.
And I think with like the rise of farmers markets, especially, you know, out here in Seattle, I mean, it's just there's a farmers market almost every single day somewhere in the city, it feels like.
Yeah.
But man, you go somewhere else in this country and it's just, you know, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. You know, so there's these food deserts that are everywhere out here. And so, you know, how we can start minimizing these places where, you know, people's only meals are going to either fast food or a gas station.
Right.
You know, and that's the reality of a lot of people's lives right now.
Yep. It's the convenience factor.
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah. And, you know, permaculture is a slow way of life. It's that walking through pebbles.
Yeah.
Feeling each pebble as you walk across that river.
Right. But there's that awareness that it brings, you know, and I think we've gotten, the collective we have gotten a little too comfortable with that instant gratification, right? I order something, it's here. Amazon, right? Amazon was big during COVID. I mean, I utilize the shit out of Amazon. I order something and sometimes the same day it would show up. You know, and so we're in this instant gratification. We do a thing, we expect a thing to come back. So when it takes us 2 months, a week, whatever it is to grow something, you know, it's like, no, it doesn't happen right away. But the long-term gratification is there because not only are you now building confidence in yourself to know that you can survive, you can supply yourself with these things, but you're really subconsciously changing that wiring of that instant gratification. You're dialing into that, I'm going to wait. We can see that if I do this now, it'll benefit me down the road. So I'm going to do this or not do this thing, and then I can reap the benefits of. We're losing that because now everything is right here, you know? So if we get that space and that time again, and I mean, life's the longest thing we're ever going to do, right? Why not like fill it with cool shit?
Yeah.
Netflix will always be here. You can always find something on Netflix. Sit down when you want to and watch that. Or take this 2 hours that you would dedicate to Netflix and go fucking learn about composting or go learn some cool new trick. You know, there's all these things. We have time if we looked at it in a different way. But, you know, in our society, we're so burnt from running from one place to the other that we don't feel we have time because we got to have our couch time. We got to have our downtime, whatever it is, you know.
I think a lot of it is it's something that just kind of needs to become a little bit more of a habit for some people.
Right.
We are, throughout the history of our evolution, we were so connected to the earth. We were just, gardening wasn't really a thing. It was just where you lived.
Right.
And so now that we've been so far removed from that, when people get back out there and they start doing it, not only one, is it physical. So I heard something where somebody said that it was I heard somewhere somebody said.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. You should write that one down.
I am. That's going to be on the show notes.
Yeah.
Someone said something.
There was a study where an hour of gardening was the equivalent of an hour of lifting weights.
Really?
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if that's 100% true or not.
Right.
I definitely feel after an hour sculpt class that an hour of gardening is not comparable. But when you're out there gardening, you're getting some physical exercise. And then you're getting that mental side of it. Like I was talking about with my fingers in the soil, you get this kind of like slow down approach.
Yeah.
Where it's not about who is your next notification or what the next ding on your phone is. I like to have my phone in the garden when I see something really cool and I want to take a picture of it.
There you go.
I think that's really the only, or if I'm listening to a podcast, which I recommend this one.
There you go.
And then lastly, I think with kind of that mentality, there's a lot of research going into Alzheimer's and people gardening. And so
Wow.
are they really looking forward to what the end goal is of their gardening, or is it something else?
Right.
That they're just kind of enjoying being out in nature and, you know, oh, there's a bird up there, you know, fluttering around, or a butterfly. I mean, it's just, I think from the beginning to the end, being outside and being in tune with nature leads you to your best life. It's that's how it is for me.
Yeah.
It's the passion, it's the joy that I've come to find with it.
Right. And, you know, I love your example of the hands in the dirt. And, you know, because I have a lot of friends that aren't in touch with themselves. They still think of their body as a machine, and I just fill the machine, and the machine's fine until it breaks, and I go get it fixed. But that intuition that you have from having the time to put your hands in that dirt, right, for that example, that could be totally lost on somebody else. But the gnosis with a G that you have, the knowing that that is a thing and that you can tell the temperature, you can feel that, right? That comes from that experience and that trust that you developed with yourself, right? And we all have that intuitive nature. That's not magic. That's not something we have and we lost. It's all within us. It might be atrophied, right? Because we don't use it a lot. But the more we listen to that intuition, the more that strength starts to come in, and it permeates through everything, right? Because if you can listen to your body and tell from the breath you just took that maybe there's something going on there, maybe there's hunger, maybe I'm about to like have an asthma attack, you know, something like that. But you're paying attention to your body as you're paying attention to the world around you. And when we can have that focus again and really dial back into that, I think we'll start to gain some of our humanness back and see the magic. Because we are fucking magical creatures. Yeah. I heard a quote one time from a guy that said, humans are gods. We're just shitty fucking gods. We can create things like that. We can destroy things like that, right? It doesn't take a lot. We've just gotten so used to the power that it's not even interesting to us anymore, and we just abuse it. Fucking throw that thing away, light that thing on fire. It's all good. Out of sight, out of mind, right? But when we know that every decision that I make is going to affect somebody, the person that just cut me off in traffic. I love that person because that person's me. That person's just me in a more of a hurry than I am. Maybe their kid's in the hospital. They got to go fucking get their kid. Maybe the babysitter didn't show up, right? Whatever it is. But instead of shaking my fist and saying, fuck you,
I was just thinking
about that today. Like, you know, I hope you're safe.
Yeah.
Please travel safely. Yeah. I hope you get there with some time, and I hope you find peace. Right. And even if that person doesn't hear you, which they won't, you're in a car, they're in a car. It's the intent. Right. If we hold on to that anger, if this is my lane, you just cut me off in my lane, my little jeopardizing my body. You know, it's like, no. We're all in this together, man. It's fucking crazy, man. So that intuition, man, I think that's a goal that I'm working towards right now. Listening to my body. When I meditate, I listen to me. I start to hear those intuitive moments, little messages here and there. And it's not like somebody in a bullhorn in my ear. Like it's literally sometimes like a flick of a hair on my left elbow. And I'm like, ooh, what did that mean? You know, but it's information that's coming in, you know? So with gardening now, like from, you know, residential gardening to in an apartment gardening, right? Are we able to, or would you even recommend, can you grow things inside the house, right?
Yeah.
Like vegetables, fruits, stuff like that?
Yeah, so there's these really cool, they're like these light columns. So it's this vertical gardening that you talked about earlier. So it's this column with these grow lights that basically you can have on them. And then it's a nice little column where there's little cells that the plants can be put in, and you can basically grow all sorts of greens with that. Greens inside are definitely doable if you have the right light. Okay. I think that's the biggest hurdle is light. Yeah. When it comes to growing stuff indoors. Yeah.
Is it the constant light or the type of light?
Probably the type of light, okay. I would think. Because oftentimes it's just really can be really direct light when it's not all around it, you know? So like the way it's going to grow, you might need to, like that column is actually rotatable. So you can kind of keep that level of growth even, or else it's just going to grow straight towards the light.
Right.
You want to rotate it so it grows more evenly, I guess.
Right. And again, that's paying attention to what you're doing, you know, being conscious of that.
I'd say cuttings are something really easy that people can bring inside. So basil you can cut and just stick in water, rosemary, thyme, oregano, mint, these are all part of essentially the same family, same plant family, that you can cut and just drop in some water. I mean, you can grow an avocado from a pit.
Right.
It might be 12, 15 years before you're going to get an avocado, but good luck.
I mean, we were in Hawaii recently, and it was my first time to Hawaii. First time in a tropical place in a long time, but first time to Hawaii. And we're walking around our friend's property. They live off grid and on the mainland in this place called Pauilo. And we're walking around their property, and Kristen, one of the women that live there, just grabs this avocado off the tree, like the size of my head. And I have a big fucking head. And she just like, hey, here you go. I'm like, what is this? It's a bowling ball avocado. Like, I've never seen that. And all these fruits, like passion fruits, like star fruit, all these things. She's just walking around, like, hey, here, take that. I'm like, that's all these things, man. And they're not doing anything to them. Yeah. They're not fertilizing. They're not like maintaining. It's just like, oh, there's an avocado tree on our property. Yeah. Gives us big fucking avocados.
I mean, I feel the same way out here when it's like fall and you can go up above tree line and there's just fields of blueberries that are just, you know, like it's just incredible. I don't know how many fields of blueberries I've been in, but I need more in my life. It seems like, and it's one of these places that I've seen bears in a lot. Bears love blueberries. Okay. And bears have no interest in you in a blueberry patch. They're in that blueberry patch so they can just lay there and eat blueberries all day long.
What a beautiful sight.
Yeah, right?
I would love to just like walk in and bears just like laying on his back, clawing. Yeah.
I've seen it. They're just lay on their back and they're just like,
that's so great.
They're just, it's just like, this is it, you know, like I'm in your world, man. You know?
Hell yeah, man. Oh my God. So on your farm that you have, do you grow crops also? Or
so I just have kind of my regular kind of vegetable beds that we have. We've got a big pasture right on the Wallace River that the animals kind of graze on. I've got a lot of blackberry. Okay. And so that's what the goats mainly do so when I think of animals, I think of them as equivalent to a machine that I would use in landscaping. Okay. So like a cow and sheep are going to be like your lawnmowers. Okay. They're going to be able to just kind of like graze that surface. They probably aren't going to go venture too far off. A goat is like a weed eater. I mean, it's going to go through, it's going to go into the brush and the brambles and like just eat it all down. Okay. Llamas are a little bit of the both. Okay. So they're kind of a little bit more like a hedge trimmer because they're really tall.
A little longer neck.
Yeah, so they've got this long, tall neck. And so like our blackberries are kind of at this like kind of wall around the property. The pigs, I kind of see the pigs as more like a tiller.
Okay.
So they go in and they kind of like root everything up,
Yep.
and so they've been rooting out a bunch of the thistle that we had in the property. Which, who knew that pigs like thistle root? But they do. I'm sure it's super healthy. And
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
Let's see. So the chickens are kind of like a rake. You know, they just kind of like skim the surface. Yeah. So that's that. I try to like make sure everybody's got kind of a job.
That's beautiful.
And the blackberry is the one that I fight the most.
I would imagine. Yeah, that's probably the most stubborn one out of all
It
that.
really is. It really is. Do you know the history of blackberry?
No.
Oh
no.
man. Oh, this is
me.
This is a cool one. So, blackberry. So we call the blackberry out here Himalayan blackberry.
Okay.
Its Latin name is Rubus armeniacus, which, if you know anything about understanding Latin, Rubus is the genus, so that's the first name in it, and Rubus translated into Latin is basically a bramble.
Okay.
So there's actually a study of batology, which is a study of brambles, which is just that's a tangent. Sorry. So Rubus armeniacus. Armeniacus is the species name.
Okay.
So that, to me, and it's been studied that actually comes from Armenia, where the plant is actually grown, not Himalaya.
All right.
So we call it Himalayan blackberry. It's actually Armenian blackberry. That's beside the point.
It's like how we call American Eskimo dogs American Eskimos,
Yes.
but they're really German Spitzes. We just stopped calling them that after the World War II.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's go back into the 1890s.
All right.
There's this plant geneticist grower down in California named Luther Burbank. Is that name familiar to you at all?
It does sound familiar.
Yeah, it does, right?
Yeah.
So Luther Burbank. So there's a park in Mercer Island called Luther Burbank Park. There's one building on it. It used to be a school for troubled youth in the 1930s. And so there was a massive display garden from Luther Burbank. So he would grow his stuff down in California, bring it up here as a display garden, see how it grows in the Pacific Northwest. So Luther Burbank, he was really good friends with Henry Ford, Thomas Edison.
Okay.
He was kind of one of these like big brains.
With the it guys of those
Yeah,
times,
exactly. Yeah. Later on in life, some weird stuff happens that I'll get into, but but his main goal was to bring to the market interesting plants.
Okay.
So a spineless cactus was one. There were a stone-free peach. So that you can actually still grow a stone-free peach. They're in production. Elephant garlic was one of his. Probably his best known was the russet potato. Which,
okay.
I mean, like,
that's all over the place.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, every single French fry we've probably ever eaten is from a russet potato.
Right.
Damn, they're good.
They are good. Yeah.
One of the things that he really wanted to grow was the biggest blackberry he could find, and he also wanted it thornless. So he found this. I think he got it from a plant catalog, and he ordered this Himalayan blackberry. So he brought it over. He cross-pollinated it with some other stuff, and did create the biggest thornless blackberry. He also introduced Himalayan blackberry to the Pacific Northwest.
Wow.
You literally cannot go anywhere between here and Southern Oregon without finding blackberry on a property.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in all of our native lands. It's everywhere. So that's the history of the blackberry.
So he was somewhat successful. He made a big blackberry without thorns, but is that around still?
It is. You can. You can buy a thornless blackberry.
Okay.
And they are quite delicious. They're huge. But they're not super popular.
Yeah.
But I mean, just to think this one guy.
Yeah.
Looking through a plant catalog, and all of a sudden now we have like every single person here knows what a blackberry is.
Yeah.
It's probably the most distinguishable plant that anybody walking down the street knows. We all eat blackberry from the end of August to September.
Yeah.
Just because it's everywhere.
Yep. People are always on the side of the road picking them, all that shit.
Yeah. I mean, so I think our first year at our farm, I ended up picking probably a good 40 or 50 pounds of blackberry. A good buddy of mine made some blackberry wine and some blackberry brandy. And so we freeze berries every single year. So I mean, I love the fact that I'm able to get berries and have berries year round. But man, it's just one of those weird things that this guy in the 1890s brought it over, and now I get to eat blackberries all the time.
Right.
Every morning I'll throw blackberries in a smoothie.
Yeah. There you go. There was a science that's fucking interesting. I love how they can draw that back to this one guy, fucking Luther Burbank.
Yeah.
God damn it. There was a botanist. I think he was in New York. I can't remember the guy's name, but his idea was to create a tree that has probably 10 different types of fruit. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to cross, what do they call
grafting.
it? Grafting. Yeah.
Yep.
And so we created this tree that is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I think there's only one. The idea was to put them into state parks and national parks and stuff like that, city parks, so that homeless people can eat them, right? And it just feeds the community. Yeah. And so he created this tree that has 10 or some odd different types of fruits that grow in it. And it's this beautiful array of lavender, light pink colors, all this stuff. It's fucking gorgeous, man. And it's just it's ideas like that. That maybe that idea didn't have the legs it needed to, but my man's thinking, he's trying something different, I love that,
Well, that's kind of the small scale stuff that it can be too. So small scale guys typically do this kind of work because they're so in love with what they do, right? So they're able to, breed this great potato generation after generation to where it's just awesome. When you're talking about that grafting on a tree, I saw it today. So what you can see as you're driving around right now, there's a lot of bitter cherry trees in bloom. Yeah. It's these little white cherry trees that are out here. What you'll end up seeing in probably the next week or two is sometimes you'll see a cherry tree with pink blossoms and white blossoms. Yeah. And so essentially what's going on there is the pink blossom is the ornamental one. It's the one that it was grown for. It's beautiful. It's grafted on top of a rootstock that has that white blossom. And so what's happened is a sucker or a reversion happens and that older graft stock sends up a white bloom out there. So then you can get this 2 different colored bloom going on a tree. Once it drops its bloom, you'll never be able to tell there's 2 different kinds of trees going on there. There's 2 different kinds of flowers. Yeah. So it's just, it's interesting stuff. And it's just those are the things that I love, the oddities in the plant world. There's so many of them that, from parasitic plants to, just epiphytic plants that don't need any roots at all. They just grow up in the canopies.
Right. Yeah. It's so crazy. It's funny. I lived in Redmond, probably one of the 3rd or 4th places I lived when I moved up here. And down in Texas, there's trees, there's shit like that, but it's not the same. Things in Texas, they grow until they die, and then you wake up and they're dead. There's no transition. It's just all right, Texas is weird. So I never really paid attention to nature and all that stuff. But when I moved up here, nature's everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's scenery, there's mountains, there's fucking cool stuff. And so I was living in Redmond, and I think we moved in the fall time, so nothing on the trees. And then in the spring, this tree that was over our balcony had both the pink and the white blossoms. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck is this? I've never seen this. How is this a thing? My girlfriend at the time, we're talking about it and stuff, but and it's still I had no idea until this conversation just now. That's just how that works.
Yeah, somebody just forgot to prune a sucker off the tree, and now it's a big branch that's gorgeous.
Yep.
And
it was beautiful. Yeah, it was great. It's little pink and white snow.
Plants have this amazing way of figuring it out. Yeah. And that's one thing that I've just always sometimes you just leave it alone. It's gonna take care of itself, and I find that fascinating. Out here, especially, if you just leave a plot of land go for 15, 20 years. You're going to get alders growing in it. It's basically going to start turning into a forest again. Probably blackberry.
Exactly right. Exactly.
I'm thinking of it. So that's when you bring the goats in. The goats eat the blackberry, and then seeds come. Yeah. So then there you go. It's all
Circle of life.
There it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Succession, plant succession. So those alders, what those alders do is they fix the nitrogen in the soil. Okay. So they sink their taproot super far deep. They only grow to be maybe 15, 20 years old, and they fall over and die. But now that nitrogen's in that soil. And so that allows the perfect spot for a Douglas fir or a cedar or some other kind of bigger, taller tree to establish its roots in there. And then all of a sudden, now you've got this successional species of plants going on, which is what a forest should be. It shouldn't just be all the same trees of the same size and age, because then it's just because that's not how it works.
Right. Yeah. And I love that we're learning more about trees and how the trees work with the mycelium, and the mycelium like shuffles all this stuff from here to there, and like
the research is so fascinating in the mycological world. All that little fungi and how they talk to each other. Oh my God, I'm struggling for water over here. Well, hey Frank. Yeah. Oh fuck, Frank's here again?
Bring it on back.
Frank's like, there's water over here, bro. So it's just it's so fascinating. They can talk to each other, through. We don't even know how they can talk to each other. There's that bioacoustics that happen where plants, when they grow out, they actually break their cells, right? So that creates a noise somewhere.
Right, yeah.
Do we hear it? No, we probably don't hear it, but the other plants of the similar kind probably hear it.
Right.
When they hear a bee come flying by, all of a sudden there's an evening primrose I think it's on the East Coast, that whenever a bee flies by, calcium ions start fluctuating inside the flower, and it allows them to produce more sugar, which makes it more attractive to the bee. Yeah. So it won't do it on that first bee, but that plant knows that where there's one bee, there's going to be more bees coming by. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I kind of think of it like salivating, a little bit.
That's, that's so beautiful. And there's so much shit, like we have such an ego when it comes to things that we can see and hear. Like we can only hear 20 to 20,000 hertz. Yeah. There's sound outside of that range. We can only see certain types of, there's all types of sight out there, right? And so it's so egotistical for us to be like, it's just a plant. They're not talking to each other. And there's like the guy that developed the lie detector test back in, I think it was the 30s. So he developed the lie detector test, and then he was trying to think about what else he could use it on. So he's in his lab one day, and he hooks it up to a plant. He puts the little electrodes on the plant, the little clamp guys, and he puts it on the leaf. And he's literally just thinking this in his head. He's having a conversation with himself in the head. He's like, man, what could I do to this plant to hurt it? How could I get a response? Well, maybe if I lit a match and then burned it, no, that might be too much. Maybe if I cut the leaf. And he's just, again, conversation in his head. He just happens to look over at the fucking lie detector test, and the needles are pinging. They're just going crazy. And he's like, what the hell is going on here? And so he goes over to the plant, and he like basically says something mean to the plant. He's like, fuck you or something. The needles start going crazy. He's like, what the hell? So he tried the opposite, and he tried to calm the plant down. He's like, hey, I'm sorry. I love you. It's all good. Things are cool. And then the needle started slowing down again. What the hell is that, right? And so like we've had that understanding for almost a century now, and we're still not really doing a lot with it, And there was a guy I just saw on Instagram the other day that had some homemade device that he made, and it had these two little needle electrodes, and it went in, and then he put them into a fungus, some kind of mushroom. And then the electrodes went to some like DJ looking box that had some knobs and some shit. And he started making music with the electric energies that were coming out of the mushroom. And he started making this cool like dance style music. I'm like, yes, that's what's up, man.
Heart tap, tap.
They're having a fucking party all the time. We just can't hear it.
Exactly.
We can't see it, but they're fucking doing it.
Exactly. I love talking to plants. I don't know how many people you've had on the podcast that say they love talking to plants, but
a couple.
I find it therapeutic on my end, probably a little bit, because like I can just come up and talk to something that it can hear me. I know it can.
Hell yeah.
And then I've just been able to see like the reaction that the plants can get, especially indoor plants. I feel like I probably talk to a little bit more because you can kind of see how they change a little bit on day to day.
Right.
Where you need to water that plant, but you just keep on forgetting because it's in another room or whatever it is. So I'm a big advocate of talking to plants. Every time I go out and do a plant layout or a plant design, I'm talking to them. It might be a little bit of shift over here or a little bit of shift over there, but yeah, there's that communication. And pruning a maple, Japanese maple, that's one of my favorite things to do. And as I'm doing it, I'm talking sweet nothings to it the entire time.
I love that, man. That's beautiful. Well, man, dude, we've covered quite a bit today, man. God damn. The last thing I really want to circle back on is the farm that you have.
Yeah.
And so how did you get to the point to where you're rescuing animals?
Yeah. So we've always, Liz and I have always been rescuing animals. All of our dogs have been rescue animals. She worked at a wildlife rehab center when she first moved out here, and then she was in the veterinary tech world. And so she's an animal health expert. So she's kind of like the backbone of like how the animals are doing and what they need and how we're caring for them.
Cool.
So that has to be kind of like the prefaces for it all, because I'm the plant guy, right?
You're the plant guy, she's the animal guy.
I'm the plant guy, she's the animal guy.
There you
go. I can bring the hay over, I can do all that stuff, but if it's like there's something wrong with Wally's eye, like I'm going to be like, well, I don't know. It's nature, right?
Yeah, right. I guess he's losing an eye.
Liz, I'm not going to be like that. It's not going to So we have this kind of like this animal background on her end, and we adopted dogs, and then we got the farm, and we got some goats in the beginning from a New Moon farm sanctuary. I think that's up in like Lake Stevens-ish, Arlington, where they did goat rescue. We rescued our cow and our llamas from Center Valley Animal Rescue. That one right there.
Oh, yeah.
Over in Quilcene. She's got an amazing farm over there with... she's got emus, and she does wildlife rehab. So she'll have like a fox or something, or an eagle or something weird like that.
Wow.
So we got them from there. We've rescued geese and turkeys from people that are just kind of like, they're older and maybe they lost a family member and they just couldn't take care of their flock anymore. Right. Yeah. We have birds. We have chickens from all over the country. Yeah. From friends of ours who have brought in birds to us, and they're like, we just can't. We're coming out. We're on a road trip, and I'm like, you really are gonna like drive chickens up here? I'm like,
all right, let's do it.
It's not my car.
Right. Exactly.
They got a home here if you can get them. So yeah. Cats. We've rescued a bunch of feral cats. Cool. They kind of live in our garage, kind of on mouse patrol. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Everybody just gets along, one big happy
Everybody's
family.
got a job, right?
Dude, and that's what's up. And it's with animals as much as humans. Like, we just want a purpose.
Yeah.
Like, we just want to feel like our effort is being appreciated. And not even appreciated, but we're part of something. Mm-hmm. Like, I can do that thing. Please let me do that thing. Like, we want to contribute. Like, not everybody, and this is broad brush stroke, but not everybody wants to just sit on the couch, right? Yeah. And I think that was a big fear for a lot of people during COVID, is like, oh, fuck, now the world's going to get lazy. We're just going to all sit around on our asses. I saw the exact opposite. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. People deserve to sit on their asses, because a lot of us have been pushed way too hard in the work industries, right? And so if you took that time to sit on your ass and you feel good about it, good for fucking you, man. Yeah. But I saw a lot of people embrace that for maybe a week, maybe a couple days. But once it's settled in, it's like, okay, what can I do? Yeah. What can I do? How can I help? How can I improve my life? Start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, go do online yoga, because I never had a chance to do yoga because I work 70 hours a week, whatever it is, right? And you have these opportunities to really kind of get your humanity back in a way and really find out what you've been missing out on. Mm-hmm. And then I've been seeing people make some changes.
Yeah, a lot of change in the professions, I mean, it's just, it's a different world out there, and I think that it was needed. There was a lot of stuff bubbling to the surface, and it's how it's getting out there. So
yeah. Did you guys find yourselves adopting more animals during COVID? Or?
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah. We ended up bringing on some more, but not too terrible. Yeah. No. Liz does work from home, so that kind of makes it a lot more. We live right next to the transfer station in Sultan, and we have fencing that go over there, but we have brought some new goats on, and they kept on going over to the transfer station so much that we had to put a Post-it note in the window of the transfer station that if goats were on the property, to give me or Liz a call and let us know. They loved it. We think they loved it. I think it brought them a little bit of joy having some goats like wandering around the transfer station. Probably not the safest thing in the world, but it was, and then all of a sudden, like, we'd have to run over there and get the goats back in the shelter, and so it's a lot of fencing. It's hard work. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a very peaceful time, but it's also a lot of hard work and a lot of procrastination kills on a farm. Yeah. So if you try to push something off for a period of time, it'll only get worse. And So do I get to play with plants as much as I like to all the time? No, because I've got a whole like flock of animals that need my attention. But I do carve out time, and you know, like it's all about timing with gardening. If you can time things properly, then you can make it look like you know what you're doing.
Right. There you go. There you go.
Fake it till you make it.
That's what's up, man.
The American way.
It really is. It really is. And you know what? And that actually brings my last question for you is, I get so many people that, you know, I love house plants. I've done a little bit of outside gardening, but most of my stuff's indoor plants. And I've got so many people that come to me and say like, they don't have a green thumb. They kill all the things that they try to grow. My advice I give them is my advice I gave to myself. It's like, I killed so much so many things when I started. It's root rot, overwatering, underwatering, ignoring, blah, blah, blah. But there was a desire for me to figure it out. And even though some of my plant buddies had to pass away, I learned a lot from that. And so that was that's the advice I give people is like, just don't give up, keep trying.
Yeah.
But you know, is there some kind of advice you can give to people to help them understand, like, it's just part of the process?
Just go out and try it. You know, like when you go to the farmer's market and somebody's got some plants there for sale, you know, try them, you know, grow a new tree. You know, there's a lot of fun things. You do need to take care of it. You know, I mean, I think it's just like any other living and breathing thing is that you have to take care of it. You've got to make sure you maintain it. It's not that hard once you kind of dial it into it. But I think it's just about trying it, you know, and it's just about finding whatever interests you. It might not be vegetable gardening. It might be a Japanese garden that is full of stones and, you know, camellias and Japanese maples and just, you know, a very Zen-like mindset to it. It really is whatever pleases you. To some, it's getting on a lawnmower and mowing for 3 hours,
right?
And drinking 3 beers while they do it. You
right.
know, I mean, like to me, it's not my cup of tea, but you know, it's like that person's getting out. That person's, you know, doing something. They're outside experiencing it. I think it's just about doing it. You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just about enjoying it. Get outside. If you live in a small apartment, go outside and take a walk. You know, it's like we're surrounded by so many parks in this area. You know the parks. You know the history of the Seattle park system.
No.
Cool.
Yeah.
So one of the early landscape architects of the 1800s was the Olmsted brothers. So they designed Central Park, the Chicago waterfront. Some stuff in San Francisco, and then they also designed our park system in Seattle. And so it's always been called the Emerald City, right? Do you know why?
No.
So basically what the Olmsted brothers did was they designed a park system, basically starting around like the Duwamish Greenbelt in West Seattle, kind of going down, and that's all industrial now, so we'll just kind of like ignore that for this time period. Then you go up Beacon Hill, and then you come down to Lake Washington Boulevard on the east side of Seattle, and that kind of curls itself around to the Arboretum, and then through the Arboretum you get into the University of Washington, and then you go down through some of the park systems to get out towards like Ballard and Golden Gardens.
Yeah.
And so they called that the Emerald Ring around the city, and so it just stuck. That's why we're called the Emerald City. And so I just think that our park system is so unique and so beautiful that if you're just stuck inside, or you don't like gardening, or you don't have a green thumb, get out there and just like there's trees that are 100+ year old in those parks that were planted by people in the 1920s and the 1910s and stuff. So it's just we're very, very blessed to have that. And I love the Arboretum. The Arboretum is my most favorite place in the world. The plant collections there are awesome. It's just, it's a little oasis in the middle of the city, it feels like.
Hell yeah.
Not like Central Park middle, but you know, it's over there.
Wow, the ring. I had no idea that
the Emerald Ring of Seattle.
Ring.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, you're fucking knowledgeable, man. I appreciate all your knowledge, brother.
Anytime. I love it.
Man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, dude. This has been fun.
Hell yeah, man. See you next time, man.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for spending time with Patrick and I. Please share, like, or leave a comment for the podcast. And if you need anything, please reach out. Obeisance and love to y'all. We'll see you next time.